are breaking me down, and the enemy's cries shake the ground. I hear your voice pierce the sound, saying I'm with you. So I lift my hands to you, I lift my heart to you. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. And I raise my weakness high, in it you'll glorify. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. Oh, shelter from the hurricane. You are my rock, you are my shade. Never changing, always the same. God, refresh me. And when my burdens, Lord, and when my burdens are breaking me down, and the enemy's cries, and the enemy's cries shake the ground. Oh, and I hear your voice pierce the sound, saying I am with you. Oh, yes I am, yes I am. So I lift my hands to you, and I lift my heart to you. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. And I raise my weakness high, in it you're glorified. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. Oh, let the river flow down from your throne. Let it wash me now and make me whole. Lord, fill my heart, flood my soul. Whoa, refresh me, oh God, refresh me. Oh, I use my hands, take control. God, let your purposes unfold. There's a greater story to be told. Yeah, refresh me, oh God, refresh me, Lord, refresh me, Lord. So I lift my hands to you, I lift my heart to you. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. And I raise my weakness high, in it you'll glorify. Refresh me, oh God, refresh me. Oh.
Greetings, my name is Kay Hunt, and I am the Director of Women's Ministries at Highland Baptist Church. I would like to personally welcome you to our Women's Gathering Refresh. In the book of Jeremiah, the Lord says to his people, I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint. What an awesome affirmation of his love. You see, Jeremiah was known as the weeping prophet. He prophesied over the reign of the last 5 kings of Judah. It was a morally bankrupt time. During his years, Nineveh fell as a city. Egypt lost the Battle of Carchemish, and Babylon emerged as the world's superpower. And little Judah, they were carried off into exile as a consequence for their sins. Sandwiched in all of these prophecies that are really hard and hard on the people of Judah are some amazing confirmations of how God views his children even after their disobedience. He himself says, "I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint." As we begin our gathering together, may you know that the Father's heart for us is no different. I would now like to introduce Marci Campbell, our first general session speaker, and I will trust that you will hear in her message that God will refresh your heart.
Wow. I am so excited that you are out there listening and a part of this women's retreat. And it is so much needed to refresh right now. I was thinking back over just the last 6 months. And in this 6 months, we had the COVID-19. There's mask wearing. There's no gatherings. The economy crashed. Everybody's losing jobs, getting laid off. Businesses that we've loved for years have gone out of business because they couldn't uphold all the rules for COVID. Protests became riots. There was isolation. All of our wonderful people that are in nursing homes and hospitals and in homes, and just individuals that are isolated from each other. And we're so used to having that gathering together and being a part of each other's lives. And that isolation has been there. And then just sheer exhaustion from just trying to keep up with all that's going on. And then came the fires. And we've always had fires in our area, and it's always been smoky, but these fires, they took out whole towns and whole areas and beautiful places and homes and lives, and took so much with the fires. And then came the hazardous smoke and all the things that came with that, and you must stay inside, you can't get out, you have to wear hazardous mask and just stay inside. It's hazardous for your health. The air quality is so bad you can't go outside. So then that's another step of isolation. And then working from home. And then everybody suddenly became homeschool teachers. And they became teachers whether they wanted to or not. Here you are, you're the teacher of your children. And so if ever we needed to refresh, now is that time. And I want us to back away from those things that are hovering over us so heavily, and just take this time and put them aside and give them to the Lord, and let's just take this time to refresh our souls. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, so much for every woman that is sitting out there and is ready and preparing their hearts to hear what you have to say to them tonight. And just give us the words, the exact things that they need to hear, and just speak to their hearts and tell them exactly what you want them to hear from the things that are said, and just comfort them and refresh them in every way possible. I remember sitting in choir practice one night, and tears were just flowing down my face, and all my choir members are around me, and I'm sure they were wondering what was going on. But I had been in a particularly difficult IEP meeting, and it was pretty rough. And my son Jesse, we had had this meeting, and we had had it with many of the workers and teachers and principals and everyone. And so I had gone on to choir practice that night, and I was sitting there and needing refreshment so badly. And our next song that came up was a song that the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir had sung. And I want to read these words to you. that touched my heart that night. It began, "Many there were that say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. But thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. I laid me down, and I slept and awakened, for the Lord sustained, for he sustained me." And that song just spoke to my heart, and it was so special to me, and it ministered to me as Barry and I had been in this meeting, and it had been a particularly hard week, and we had armored up for this IEP meeting, this individual education plan meeting, and we were there representing Jesse, and we couldn't tell him all that we were pushing for and how we were standing up for him, but we came into that meeting and they had their minds made up of exactly what they felt was best for him, and we knew that those things would not work, but they were there to convince us that that was the best thing for him. And there were principals and teachers and the county psychologist and several others that were there in that meeting. And everyone in the meeting wanted what was best for Jesse, but no one really knew what was best for him and what to do about it. Not only were we as his parents trying to blaze a trail for Jesse and his education, but also for others that were in the special education system. And this was back several years ago where there weren't very many helps. And so he was kind of a proving ground for them and experimental in what was to come. Jesse was brilliant. He knew so much about so many things, but he learned in a very different way. And sitting in a classroom and writing with a pencil was not the way that he learned. Repeating and writing over and over and over when fine motor skills were very difficult for him, and this was frustrating for him. But he was a visual student and a hands-on student and needed to move at all times. He had ADHD, mild Asperger's, spatial and sensory issues, and difficulty with fine and gross motor. Hugs were sometimes quite painful for him. The sensory issues that he had, the way he described it was that the nerve endings just felt like they were on the very edge of his skin. And if I wanted to give him a hug, I'd have to give him a heads up that I was coming for a hug. And I'd say, "I'm coming for a hug." And he'd say, "Oh, no, Mom, not right now. I can't take it." But then other times he would just melt into me with this huge bear hug that would almost knock you over. And he had a short attention span, and he was in perpetual motion at all times, and he was always on to the next adventure. So many times when we were trying to bridge that gap between him and the school, and we'd go into these meetings and we would just give them everything that we had, and we would armor up and we'd go in and we'd be exhausted when we would leave that. And this was one of those weeks, and that song ministered to us at that time. In that choir rehearsal, those words, and as we face different types of challenges, you have challenges that you face. I had challenges that I faced and face today, and we each have different things that are before us, and they just seem like things that are beyond what we can handle, and they are, but they are not too big. There is nothing too big for God to handle. And so it's important that we reach out to the Lord and we reach out to each other. There are some, our verse for today is, "I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint," Jeremiah 31:25. And so as we're talking about refreshing, there are some things that are warning signs that you need to be refreshed. And the first of those is that If you notice that your devotional life is suffering and it seems like you're not having time to do that private time, just you and the Lord getting together and praying and spending time together and reading His Word, if your devotional life is suffering, then that might be a sign that you need to be refreshed. If your family life is adversely affected, maybe if you have a nagging sense of ever being behind and you're just thinking like, I never, ever will catch up, and this is a sign that you need refreshed. If you have a low threshold for inconvenience, then this might also be a sign that you need to be refreshed. If Sabbath rest is an exception, not the norm, then that is a time when you might need to be refreshed. And in Exodus 31:17, even the Lord said, on the seventh day, He rested and refreshed. And so if the Lord needs to be refreshed, then we definitely need that refreshment. And so we need to take that Sabbath and that rest and take time. And if that's not the norm for you and that's something that you are leaving off, then that is a sign that maybe you need refreshed. If you have an overall sense of weariness, just every day you feel weary and it takes just Herculean strength to get through each day, and you're just weary and you just feel like you can't keep going another step, then you need refreshed. Physical exercise is sporadic or non-existent. It seems like for me, physical exercise was the first thing that would get crossed off the list because I think, well, that's selfish. That's just all about me. And so it would get crossed off the list and on to helping others and helping our family and helping with all the things that were on our list. And so we tend to cross off that physical exercise. I've now learned that physical exercise is very important, because if you can't have the strength physically to do the things around you, then you're going to be in trouble. And so it's important to do that physical exercise. Find some time to get in, at least a walk or something to make you stronger physically. And if you don't, then you'll start noticing that physical ailments start to increase, and you'll see little things. You'll get sick easier, and just this is hurting and that's hurting, and you'll just notice that during those times when you need refreshment, that those things are multiplying. And what about in serving God? Maybe you're still going, you're still doing, you're still teaching, you're still helping, but that gladness is gone. And that is so sad when the gladness of serving God and serving others is missing. And that's a sign that you need to be refreshed. There are some tips for refreshing. And the first of those is to make sure at home that your home is a launching pad for ministry. Your home life is important, and out of that home life can come your ministry. Recognize a need for supportive relationships. It is so important for a woman to have someone that she can go to, that she feels that she is safe with, that she can share her heart, she can share her needs, her prayer requests, and just empty out and just share what is bothering her, what her needs are. There's somebody that you know, if you tell them that, then they're going to be right there by your side. They're going to be praying for you and helping you to get through those times, and maybe help provide some things that are missing for you and help to find help for you. But that person that is a safe place for you, not someone that you tell something to and then they're going to run and tell everybody else and gossip about it, or just talk about you or make you feel bad. We don't need that during these times of a need of refreshing. We need a true friend that we can share our hearts with, and that will be there, that will be a safe place for us to go and share. And you know what? It's okay to say no sometimes. Sometimes we get into the habit of always wanting to help, and especially people who have the gift of service, and they want to help any chance they can, and then they get overwhelmed and they're helping too much, and they don't have time for any of the above. They don't have time for rest. They don't have time for exercise. They don't have time for their families. They don't have time for the devotion because they're going and doing all the time, and it's okay to say no, and pray and ask the Lord and seek Him and say, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And not what everybody else expects me to do, but what is it that you truly want me to do on this day? How can I minister to others or my family? And make priorities and ask the Lord for wisdom. He says if we'll pray for wisdom, He'll give it. And so pray for wisdom on what it is that the Lord wants you to do. And it's okay to say no to other things that are around you that seem to need you. And just because you're good at it doesn't mean that you're supposed to do it. You may be robbing someone else of the opportunity to fill that position if you are trying to do everything. And then you will be worn out and in need of refreshment. So it's okay to say no. Resist the trap of comparison. You don't know what other people are going through. I have found that as I get to know people and become friends with them, every person that I've ever met had something that they were dealing with and dealing with deeply. And we can look on the outside, and you can pass somebody in the hallways, you can have somebody next to you in your class, but until you really get to know them and they share with you and become that safe place, then you don't know what their lives contain and what they're dealing with. And there's some major things that people right next to you, maybe even in the room where you are right now, that are in pain, physically, emotionally. There are so many things that in today's life that we're dealing with. And so be aware and don't compare your life to other people's because you don't know what they're going through. And you've been given this life, and God gave you exactly your life and your gifts and your talents to use in service for Him. So don't get to falling into that trap of comparison. Find time to take a break. You may not be able to go off for 2 weeks and take a long vacation, but if you can just find 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do something that refreshes you, and little breaks here and there can keep you from breaking. So a break can be a good thing to keep you from breaking. You don't have to pretend the pain isn't there. But God knows, and those close to you know, and He made us, and He knows every thought that we have, and we can't pretend to Him, and we can't pretend to others that the pain isn't there. We need to apply Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to them that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. And there is a purpose for things that are going on around you, and use them for the good to bring glory to the Lord. And we need to feed our weakened spirits. And there's a verse that goes along with that. In 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18, therefore we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction, I know it feels like it's bigger than a light affliction, but those momentary light afflictions, that is producing for us an absolutely incomparable, eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Let's be honest with God. He knows anyway. And there's a verse, Psalm 51:6, that goes along with that. And we need to eat and exercise and rest well. And I know you're rolling your eyes and saying, who has time for that? But it's very important. And in Isaiah 40:31, the Lord tells us, but those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. And that's Isaiah 40:31. That's one of my favorite verses. And in those times when I've been weary and needed strength, I would read that verse, and it just meant so much to me. If we trust in the Lord, He will renew our strength, and we'll soar on wings like eagles and run and not grow weary and walk and not faint. What refreshes you? I was trying to think of some things that were refreshing and trying to think, some of my friends, when they're talking about, oh, I just need to refresh. And these were some of the things that they mentioned. It might be their animals or their horses, or just sitting with a cup of coffee for a minute refreshes them. Or maybe their time of devotion and journaling, and that is so refreshing to them. Or flowers, or a prayer time with friends, or spending time with friends, or hiking, or just looking at a beautiful sunset, or water of any kind refreshes me. And if you know me, I can just look at a picture of the ocean or a waterfall or a stream or a creek, and it is so refreshing to think about. And I look at the ocean and I think, you know, the God who is in control of that ocean, that mighty ocean, can handle anything I'm going through. And so I would like for you to get a pen or a pencil and just think about, what are some things that really refresh you? If somebody said, you can do anything, you can have anything, what is something that would just totally refresh you? The little things, something big, something little, but just on a daily basis, what could you find that would be refreshing to you? And I want you just to take a minute. We're going to pause for just a minute and just allow you to jot down some of the things, and you might discuss with those around you some things that are refreshing, but jot those down for right now. So we're just going to pause for just a minute and give you time to do that. Okay, you can come back to that list later and see if there's any of those things that you can bring into your life. Just a little tiny break. Maybe it's just reading a chapter in a book, or taking your coffee out on the back porch. Some quick type of refreshment. And then think of some bigger things that might be refreshing to you. I want to go back to a verse in Psalm 3:3. But thou, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Psalm 3:3. And did you catch that? the lifter of my head. There I was in that choir practice, just exhausted, wounded, frightened, trying to recover from that IEP meeting. And through those tears, there was some awesome, powerful music and scriptures that spoke to my heart. And they refreshed me. God refreshed me. He covered me with his love, and he protected me in that moment. And during these difficult times, we need to realize that we can reach out to the Lord, and he can restore us. He can refresh us. He can be there. He can be that lifter of our head. I think this paints a beautiful picture of a loving father tenderly taking a crying, discouraged child's face and just putting his hands on their face and lifting their head. And that child just looking directly into the Lord's face. And what happens when that happens? Then your eyes are on Jesus, your protector, your refresher. And all the things that are going on around you and all the horrible things that are surrounding you are not your focus, but your focus is directly on the face of Jesus, and he is the lifter of your head. And there's another verse, and I want to share something with you that I just really appreciate. That was a Ravi Zacharias quote. And he said, "So do not fear the struggle, rather embrace it. Embrace it in the knowledge that the grand weaver will take all of your struggles, all of your questions and disappointments and fears, and use them to build your faith and increasingly make you into a man or woman who looks like Jesus Christ." In Isaiah 41:10, it says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold on to you with my righteous right hand." Isaiah 41:10. And the Lord is holding on to us. He's lifting our heads. In these times when so much is going on around us, he's there, a loving Father, lifting our heads, surrounding us, and holding on to us with his righteous right hand. We don't have to hold on to him. He's holding on to us, and he's going to get us through all of these things. And I'd like to close with a word of prayer for my part. Thank you, Lord, for this time together with these ladies, and just be the lifter of their heads, and just hold on to them with your righteous right hand, and give them wisdom to know what it is that you want them to do in the time that they have here on earth. You've given special talents and gifts to each person, and we're all different. None of us are alike, and you gave us each unique gifts. We don't have to be like anybody else. That would be boring, and you made us unique individuals and gave us the opportunity to serve you and love you and bring glory to you, and just take our lives and use them to your glory and refresh us. And remember that verse that we began with, "I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint."